Over the years, excavations at Aesica have revealed various sections of the fortifications and internal buildings, along with the bathhouse which was situated outside the south gate, and not forgetting 2 independent hoards, one containing jewellery, the other coins. One building we haven't yet covered in any depth is, of course, the Horrea. The Horrea, often referred to as the Granary, was arguably the most important building within any castra. Even if the fort and every other building within it was made from turf and timber, it is said that the Horrea would always be built from stone. The Romans understood the need to supply good quality food if they wished to avoid mutiny within the rank and file of the legions, and this was reflected in the construction of the Horrea. To my mind, the best example of this building is the one at Vercovicium, so why don't we use that one as our template? This is a double Horrea, and at this stage the setup looks very much like a hypercore system, but instead of providing heat to a building, this system was meant to keep the buildings cool, dry and well ventilated. Notice for a moment how the supporting pillars are firmly buttressed against the building around the entire perimeter. Even at this stage, it's presenting us with an air of strength, firmness and stability. Thick stone flags would have been mortared into position on top of the pile and simply pointed with a lime render. All that remained now was to build upwards. Windows would be narrow and high. Thick wooden doors with complex locking systems would have been fitted. And now the building was complete, strong enough to contain the vast amounts of grain bursting to break down the walls, whilst being secure enough to keep it safe from wind, rain, fire and theft. And that was the message this building was imparting to the legionaries and auxiliary soldiers. Today we would view this building as a combination between the army catering stores and the quartermaster's store, containing a wide variety of foodstuffs along with clothing and other small items of military equipment. A far cry from the image of all that grain pushing with such a force against the buttressed walls. From Aesica, it's another 3-mile stroll along the final stretch of Steel-rigg to Magnis, and of course Walltown Quarry. But seeing as I've already walked it and Paul's off doing his own bit of filming, I'm going to make a brew. But so you don't feel left out, here's a few pictures I took along the way. Whilst I was enjoying my brew, Ian and Preeti, a couple from Australia, were passing by, and as is usual, you exchange pleasantries and have a quick chat. Well, having travelled so far to visit the wall, they were naturally very impressed with what the Romans had accomplished. We see you as people of long ago, the bonding links broken with the passage of time. no more do we share the connection with the land upon which we stand. We are but visitors, in transit through the home of our ancestral forefathers and their kin. The stone upon which my hand now rests was once worked, fashioned, and laid in place by the invaders from Rome. They built their serpent with control and division in mind, and yet, today, people from all lands meet and in passing marvel at this feat. We give no thought to voice the claims of accusation and condemnation for the oppression and violence which lay in its dark shadow. For us, another day dawned, and now comes to rest. Tending to weary limbs our only concern. But with the last rays of the day's sun, a cool breeze washes over the land, and for an instant, for those with eyes to see, just there, captured within the twilight mirage, they still stand guard. Warriors should grow wise and knowing in their years. My ancestors lived in a time when a warrior would be judged by his courage, his treatment of others, his wisdom, and the mercy and compassion he may show to an enemy. It was always accepted that the gods may challenge and test us in the lives that we have lived. The Romans invaded these lands when my father's father was but a boy. And it was as a boy that I would listen to the travellers who had met the Romans tell their stories around the campfire at nights. These stories were all I knew of the Romans. I understood that the Romans had come to take our lands and to make slaves of our people, killing all those who opposed them in thoughts, words, or deeds. When I grew to be a man, I took a wife, Sheila, and she bore me a strong and spirited son, Cullen. The long dark nights of winter were passing, and we needed to restock our larders with fresh meat from the forests. The hunting party which I led was a half-day's travel from the ball. Yet the shouts and screams and calls of our people were carried far on the winds to our ears. The men of Rome left none alive, nor did they take any to be sold into slavery. Many winters have come and gone, and I have killed many Romans, plucked out their eyes and fed them to the carrion crow, slit their lying tongues from their mouths, and their ears I have hung from the boughs of oak trees, so they shall forever hear the cries of my people carried on the winds. And still this is not enough. For vengeance is a thirst that can never be quenched. In BC 55 and 54, Julius Caesar had made 2 attempts at invading Britain. The second had been more successful, but before leaving Britain with his legions, Caesar put in place a friendly king, Mandubracius, of the dominant tribe, the Trinovantes. In return, Mandubracius promised Caesar annual tributes from both his and other tribes of southern Britain. And for the next 80 years or so, many southern kingdoms of Britain not only had very good relations with Rome, but also amongst themselves. But then came a period of instability. The Trinovantes were losing their sphere of dominance and influence to the Cativoluni, which resulted in the Trinovantes' capital, Camulodunum, being taken in an act of aggression. The Cativoluni also turned their attentions towards the Atrebates, forcing its king, Verica, to flee to Rome in exile. Both the Trinovantes and the Atrebates were technically client states of Rome, and therefore came under its protection. The year is 43 AD, and Claudius has been Emperor of Rome for a mere 2 years. Afflicted with a limp and partial deafness, he lacks any military experience. Nevertheless, appointing General Aulus Plautius as overall commander of 4 legions, Claudius mounts an invasion force to reinstate Verica, the exiled king of the Atrebates. Setting sail from Boulogne, the invasion force crossed in 3 divisions, landing at Rutupiae. The Roman forces, in the region of 80,000 legionaries and auxiliaries, met with stiff resistance from the British. The battle raged for 2 days, until the British were eventually pushed back to the Thames and thoroughly routed. Now here, the Romans had no intentions of leaving, and made Camulodunum their new capital, much to the dismay of the Trinovantes.